Hi, everyone. My name is Brett Molotsky, and I'm a member of the Board of Directors here at the Rubicon Theatre Company. And I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the entire board to Rubicon Connections, an interview series that we're going to be providing for you, celebrating the passions and the interests of the entire Rubicon family, board members, volunteers, staff members, donors, and community members. And today is the first in our series, and I'm really excited to welcome to the Rubicon Connections the Rubicon Theater's co-founder and producing artistic director, Karyl Lynn. Hi, Karyl Lynn.
Hi, Brett.
Welcome. It's so
Thank
exciting to have you as the first guest for our Rubicon Connections series. And I wanted to start by asking you a really interesting question. What was the first theater experience that you remember? And growing up, what was the first piece of theater that kind of touched you?
When I was in the fourth grade, I went with some neighbors to see a high school production of The King and I. And I remember it so vividly. And I think seeing it, as a child too, because there were children in the story and in the production, I was so moved and excited by it. And of course, it was incredibly colorful and had great production values. And I was hooked, although I was already doing performances with the neighborhood kids, probably from the time I could speak. But that was the first production that I saw on stage.
And when do you consider your first performance? When were you first on stage, featured, not necessarily with the neighborhood kids, but in a production?
In grade school, we did a production of Hamlet. And I was the player queen. And so
very cool.
And that was also in grade school. I think I might have been a book in the library play, maybe in kindergarten, but what's not really memorable is the book,
Well, there's no small parts, right?
Yeah, right. only little golden books. Yes.
That's right. So growing up, what would you consider the most influential piece of theater that you saw or that you performed in, the one that really kind of said to you, this is what I want to do with my life?
We went to what was then Missouri Repertory Theater in school. They did daytime student matinees, as we do here at Rubicon. And it was a very grown-up play, but oddly, it was a production of The Heiress. Which I then did later professionally at Ensemble Theater with Ben Bottoms, one of the Bottoms brothers, and William Lucking. I just think that was one of the first plays of ideas and a relationship. And I think I knew really very early on that it was what I wanted to do from the neighborhood plays that we did. I mean, when we went to see Sound of Music at the movie theater, then we made the play of Sound of Music in our basement. Or when we saw puppet shows, we took out the television and did puppet shows. And my mother tells a story that I was watching a movie and I spoke late. I didn't do syllables. I kind of didn't speak at all. And then I was speaking in full sentences. But she said when I was about 2, she had been watching a Cary Grant movie and she saw me like crawling up to a mirror and saying, Judy, Judy, Judy. So I think I was a natural mimic and liked to entertain.
So you studied theater in school, but what was your focus? Theater administration is not a typical career path for folks. Usually, they come into it from a performance or a writing standpoint. So what was it for you?
For me, I first came to it through a love of literature. So for a while, I thought I was going to be an English major. I loved to write stories and poems and had a great teacher in junior high school and then more in high school. So I think I loved literature first. And then when I went to college, I was actually a double major in theater and journalism. So I was in the PR sequence at the University of Kansas, and then later went to American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco. But so the PR was really still about writing, but it's through the PR that I came into administration, and then the rest of it was all about performing at the time.
And where and when was the Rubicon born?
The Rubicon was born not long after Jim O'Neill, the co-founder of Rubicon, and I were married. And we were living in Santa Barbara, and we had been doing plays professionally for quite a time. And he was on the road with Jesus Christ Superstar playing Pontius Pilate. And we had not been married long, and he was gone for really about a 2-year period. And I had a PR business at the time and would go out and visit him on the road. But we knew that when he came home, we wanted to start a theater company together. So we'd written a business plan to start a theater company, but we didn't really want to compete with the friends that were living in Santa Barbara. And there had not been a fully professional theater company in Ventura. And while Jim was on the road, I was hired as a consultant for the Ventura Chamber Music Festival to help them take this incredible chamber music festival from a city-run event to its own nonprofit, and got to know a lot of the people in Ventura and fell in love with it here. So when Jim came home off the road, we decided to try to start the theater company here.
And I have to ask, what was the first Rubicon Theater production?
It actually was Jesus Christ Superstar, because Jim knew all the people who had done it from the road, Ted Neely, who appeared in the film, and Carl Anderson, who appeared in the film with him. The two of them, Paul Ainsley, who had been the original Herod on Broadway, a lot of them flew themselves in to Ventura. We rented the Ventura Theater, and we did a concert version of it. Jim did Pilate, and it was just an incredible experience. It was a mix of people in the community who auditioned, and then Ted and Carl who came in. It was actually, for those who are Jesus Christ Superstar fans, it was the last time that Ted and Carl performed together on stage before Carl died. And we planned to do 2 productions or 2 evenings of it, and it sold out immediately, and we added a third.
2 things that I took just from that little story was, first is the really kind of amazing energy that must have been in that room to have that cast together to be able to sing that incredible music. But second is something that I think resonates all the way up to today, which is the connection between the Rubicon and the community in which the Rubicon lives. You said that there were community members that had auditioned, and obviously the community was able to enjoy the performance. But tell me a little bit about how that connection made during that very first performance sort of is a through line for the theater company up to today.
During the rehearsal for Jesus Christ Superstar, we had rehearsed with the local community first, and Ted came in late, and he had been driving, so we didn't know when he was going to arrive, or even if he was going to be there that day for rehearsal. And he came in just right at one of those moments where he, as Jesus, just wails, and behind the cast who didn't see him come in, and it was as though he came in right on cue and just, did that incredible Ted Neely scream, and the cast just went crazy. So, I think they just took the leap of faith, believing we were going to have these incredible performers to come work with them. And just sort of the elation, but also the volunteer energy in the community that happened around it, because the Ventura Concert Theater was, of course, primarily a rock and roll venue, no seats. So we had more than 100 volunteers there that day for this first event, lashing chairs together, scrubbing the floors at the Ventura Theater. We barely had a tech rehearsal and put it together. So there was this incredible electric kind of energy in the room. And then Ted stayed for a little while. He didn't live here. And right after that, we had an event at what was Jonathan's Mediterranean restaurant. We had tables of 12 with everyone sitting on one side, and Ted went to sit in the middle, and we called it the First Supper.
Supper. I love it.
It was where we started to bring a board together for the company.
What a great story. And I think, again, it just resonates all the way through all these years later to what the Rubicon is really about in terms of its presence in the community, as well as the connection that it makes to the community at large. Tell me some of the ways that community members get involved and have been involved over the years with a professional theater company, which is a little bit unique in terms of how closely connected the Rubicon is to its community and the members.
One of the things that I love is maybe 5 years ago or so, we did a campaign that was called Our Town, Your Theater. And we sent out surveys and asked people kind of what they felt about the theater. And the most common thing that came back to us is that people felt like Rubicon was family for them, or extended family. And that meant so much to us. We always say that in terms of, that we want to have world-class artistry, but small town hospitality. So I think of one of our first house managers, Donna Berger, was an usher when I first met her. And I came into the theater and hadn't met her. And she said, "Welcome to the Rubicon," like she was inviting me into her living room. And that kind of warm and welcoming spirit, I think, is very important to us, and I think seems important to the community as well. I feel like they own it. So they've been involved as ushers. We've had a volunteer every day of the week in the box office through most of our 20 plus years. We've had volunteers backstage, which is unusual for a professional theater. Volunteers who've painted the set, who've helped sew costumes. So we are a professional theater company, but I feel like we're community-based and community-fueled. I think in a community of our size, we wouldn't have the resources to hire people in every area. So there have been all these many volunteer opportunities, and then there have been the sponsors that have paid for the professionals to train and lead the way. So I was, just because we were talking about Jesus Christ Superstar, one of our first sponsors was Barbara Meister. And I had written her a proposal, but I didn't know her very well. And then I went to an anniversary party for Dottie and Bernie Novat, and we were all doing the chair dance, and we were having this incredible time. And she came up to me and said, "I'm Barbara Meister." And I said, "Oh, yes, I know who you are." And she said, "Well, you wrote a proposal to me to see if I'd sponsor Jesus Christ Superstar, but you never called me." And I said, "Yes, well, I was a little sheepish about it because it's Jesus Christ Superstar, and I know that you're Jewish." And she said, "Well, he's one of our most successful boys. So
that's right.
You have to call me." And so I did, and she was a sponsor, as you were Sandra and Jordan Labby initially. Jordan Labby is still with us as a sponsor, and many others. So it's been amazing.
That's wonderful. It's a great story. I did want to pick up on one thing that you mentioned in terms of the community involvement, volunteer efforts. And obviously we're living in a very challenging moment here. But, in the old adage, right, the show must go on. And as one of the many programs that we're working on at the Rubicon, I wanted to ask you if there were specific ways that members of the community or anyone who's watching us today might be able to participate in connecting with the Rubicon and getting involved as we look at different ways of producing theater.
Well, it's such a great question, and I think it's one we think about every day at the moment. We have had many volunteers just reaching out to other constituents, which I really loved. We had a few members of our youth program ask if there were senior citizens that were subscribers that they could call and just say hello to or tell them about their day. And I loved that. We've had some volunteers calling those who have resubscribed, even knowing, that there's a lot of uncertainty in the future. But they've been calling to say, thank you for taking this leap of faith. And it's great to have that be peer-to-peer, to have one volunteer call another volunteer and say that. But there are still many tasks that can be done, from, cleaning up databases and, working on those types of things. There's a lot of project work that can be done by volunteers. And then, of course, people can still subscribe to next year's season. It's a great vote of confidence. They can also make contributions, which is helpful during this time when there's no ticket income and no donation income to speak of. So there are many ways. Really, it can be individual to any person who wants to help. I think there's a place for everyone.
There will be more coming from all of us at the Rubicon in terms of ways to engage and different programs and offerings that we'll be bringing to you, hopefully. What's your favorite show that the Rubicon produced?
That's so hard because, of course, it's, like naming your favorite child. I have so many favorites. I think an easy one for me or one or two to talk about would be those that I was in, because I love getting to have that backstage experience too. I came from kind of a rowdy, fun family, and I think that's part of what I love about theater. So to be able to be in front and behind is fun. But so Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, which is not a particularly happy play, but just it's such a meaty, rich piece of writing, and to get to explore that from the inside with Joe Spano, Jason Chanos, Angela Goethals, and Jenny Sullivan as the director. And because it was such difficult material, we kind of huddled together, every night as a group and helped each other through it. Dancing at Lunasa with Susan Clark, Stephanie Zimbalist, Bonnie Franklin, and Precious Chong, Joseph Fuquay and Jim O'Neill. That was a very precious experience. I have Irish roots, and I think I really related to that. From the front, I really loved doing the Beckett Festival, which was very challenging, I think, for us to do and for many in our community. But it was on the eve of the Beckett Centennial, and we had artists from 5 different countries here. We did the entire Beckett canon, either on stage or screen. We screened the Beckett on Film series, working with the Irish Television and Michael Colgan from the Gate Theatre in Ireland. That was very precious to me. I personally love new works, so any of the new plays that we've done, I really find that fulfilling, just to try to find new material that is relevant to today's issues and to things people are concerned about.
So one more question. Obviously, you've seen a lot of theater over the years. Is there one show or one production that you feel that you've seen that has just been, if you could recommend one piece of theater to somebody, what would it be?
Well, I saw Sunday in the Park with George for the first time at Seattle Rep on the day that they won the regional Tony. They won it that evening. And I think the things that I care about are art and children. And of course, that play speaks to both of those things, like to the challenges related to producing art, to why we do it, to the meaning of it, depth of feeling about it, and children too, which is interesting. We don't have children of our own, nor did Sondheim, who wrote it, but I have many children that I love, and nieces and nephews, and the children who've been a part of our education programs. And that play just spoke to me so much. So I'd say that's my favorite.
Fantastic. And it fits right in with the theme of everything that the Rubicon is, in terms of reaching out into the community and the community being part of the story. Karyl Lynn, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for doing this series and for launching it. I'm excited to hear from many people in the community over the course of the coming weeks through you.
Absolutely. And to everyone who's watching, thank you so much. And we will see you next time on Rubicon Connections. Have a great day.